Today I'm going to be installing this rag joint eliminator from Low Range Off-Road. Okay, let's see what's in the bag. You got 3 bolts, and we got the U-joint. The Samurai should use these 2 bolts, and then that one. The only tool you should need is a 12mm wrench. Okay, so let's go see how easy this is to install. Okay, I'm going to start out by taking the steering shaft loose from the rag joint. I'm using a 12mm socket and a box end wrench from the other side. I just take one side loose and then flip it over and take the other side off. I was having a lot of trouble recording this, so I did miss some stuff, but once you take that part loose, now you can take this off of the shaft on the steering box. You do have to take off a 12mm bolt that goes through the side and clamps it onto the shaft right here on the steering box. But somehow I messed up and didn't record that. Okay, right here I'm putting the rag joint eliminator on. I had to slide it on and off a couple of times and use my hammer hand to kind of get it as far back as I want. Once you get it in place where you want it, go ahead and put the bolt in it and kind of snug it down so that way it locks it in place so you can get the rest of the job done. Okay, so this is the part that's kind of difficult. You have to take the steering shaft loose right here and collapse it a little bit. This is why this is probably going to turn into like a 2-hour job rather than a 30-minute job for most people. I'm not saying anybody can't do it, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get it the right length. I use a press and press the spline part against a piece of wood to collapse mine. It has plastic shear pins, and it's actually kind of hard to collapse it. But once you have it the correct length, then you can just put it in place. And one more thing, make sure you keep everything orientated in the right position. That way your steering wheel still centers. I did keep mine in the same place, but I didn't really show that. Okay, after you go ahead and mock everything up and make sure it fits right, or it looks like it's going to fit, you can go ahead and tighten this bolt. This is supposed to be 10 foot-pounds. I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low, so I'm just going to guesstimate, but you need to make sure you use a torque wrench on yours. Okay, now you can put these bolts in. These are actually 13mm, and they torque to 11 foot-pounds. I know that most people don't have this little gap right here. My Samurai has a 2-inch body lift, so I'm kind of cheating, but this actually helps show it. I was thinking about taking my body lift off, but you know what? I think I'm just going to keep it. So I just stick a screwdriver in there to hold it in place and estimate 11 foot-pounds. And then spin the shaft around and tighten the other one the same way. Now I'm going to tighten this bolt that clamps the U-joint onto the shaft on the steering box. This one torques to 10 foot-pounds. And there's a groove kind of cut out for it on the shaft, and it can only go on one way. Just make sure that split is like in the center of the groove and the bolt should be able to go through it. This kit comes with some extra nuts that have like nylon inserts. They're lock nuts that go on the back of these to make sure everything stays in place. I'm just going to go ahead and put those on and tighten them up, and then flip it around and do the other side. These nylon nuts that go on the other side, they're supposed to be torqued to 11 foot-pounds as well. And we're almost done. When I pulled this U-joint out of the box, it already had an extra nut right here in place. So I'm going to go ahead and install it with the lock washer. It doesn't really have it in the instructions, but I'm just going to put this on here for one more thing to kind of lock everything down. That way nothing comes loose. Go ahead and tighten it up. And then I think I'm done. Now it's time to go ahead and test it out and see what I think. I kind of wish I would have done a before and after comparison, but I didn't think that was fair because the rag joint was already busted. But I promise you it feels a lot better. It almost feels like I have power steering. There still is a little bit of play in the steering, but I think most of that's in the steering box because it's a junkyard one that who knows how old it is. And all my other ball joints and all the linkages are fairly new. So I don't know, this is kind of debatable, but it actually feels a lot better to me. And my opinion is what counts the most. Okay, so what I think about it, I really like it. It was a lot harder to install than I thought it was. partly because I was sitting with the sun facing right in my face. But you can see whenever I turned it, it doesn't flex at all. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. I know everybody might have their own opinion, but most of that plays probably in the steering box. And after you already have it set up for one of those rag joint eliminators, it'd be a lot easier to replace than one of these actually. The first time, no, it's going to be hard, but to replace it now, if it ever wears out, would probably be pretty easy. This is the old one. I replaced it probably a year ago, and it real quick it busted out right here. But since these, they have like a safety thing where, this is probably not a factory one, but most of them have some type of safety that interlocks them. This has a piece of metal right here that goes behind this one, so that way, even though it busts loose, it can't actually separate. But still, I don't like that. This still had a whole lot of flex in it. It made the steering feel real like spongy. So yeah, if you're running bigger than stock tires, you probably need something like that, especially if you off-road a lot. With one of these, you'll probably just rip it real quick. Alright, that concludes my video. If you found this helpful or entertaining, please like and subscribe. The end.